Patrick Bet David didn't tiptoe into this conversation, he detonated it. When Patrick Bet David went on camera and called out Angel Reese by name, he didn't wrap it in media-safe language or soften it with diplomatic hedging. He said the quiet part out loud, that every single WNBA player should be praying that Caitlin Clark stays healthy, because she is the gravitational force holding the league's financial momentum together during these CBA negotiations. And the reason it hit so hard is because the timing couldn't have been sharper if it were scripted. While Reese was on live stream floating the idea of sitting out the 2026 season like it was a power chip she personally stacked on the table, Clark was sitting at the analyst desk for NBA on NBC, composed, articulate, and radiating confidence that a deal will get done. One projected stability. The other projected brinkmanship. One looked like the face of a growing enterprise. The other looked like someone threatening to unplug the machine while it's finally starting to hum. Bet David's point was brutal but simple: you don't threaten to sit out a season you didn't build. The leverage currently in the room didn't materialize out of thin air, and it didn't materialize because of nostalgia for the league's past. It materialized because arenas that used to echo are now packed, because television executives who once slotted games into afterthought time slots are now treating them like appointment viewing, because merchandise that once collected dust is now moving at a rate that forces restocks. And the catalyst for that shift has a name. Clark didn't just join the league, she dragged a tidal wave of attention behind her. Attendance spikes, ratings surges, social engagement explosions, those aren't abstract talking points, they're measurable shifts. When Reese publicly discussed her $74,000 salary and said the WNBA doesn't pay her bills, she wasn't wrong to highlight the economic imbalance that has existed for years. The league's salary structure has lagged behind its male counterpart for decades, and players absolutely deserve improved compensation and benefits. But the optics of threatening a walkout at the precise moment the league is negotiating from newfound strength felt to many fans like lighting a match in a room finally filling with oxygen. Bet David's argument wasn't anti-player, it was anti-delusion. He compared the WNBA's strike threats to historic work stoppages in leagues like the National Football League, National Basketball Association, and Major League Baseball, but with one massive distinction: those leagues were already revenue behemoths when they flexed. They weren't operating at annual losses. They weren't fighting for baseline cultural relevance. They were giants negotiating percentages of enormous pies. The WNBA is negotiating growth capital while still stabilizing its foundation. That doesn't mean players should accept scraps. It means strategy matters. Public trust matters. Messaging matters. And when reports surfaced that ownership had in fact brought a formal proposal with real salary cap increases and max contracts potentially climbing into the millions over time, the narrative that there was no offer started to crack. Once fans sense that the public framing doesn't match the private paperwork, sympathy erodes fast. Add to that the optics of executive committee members attending crucial meetings virtually while ownership showed up in person, and the perception battle became even more complicated. Meanwhile, Clark's NBC appearance wasn't just a feel-good cameo, it was a corporate signal flare. She walked into a national NBA broadcast environment and looked entirely at home. That sends a message to sponsors, to advertisers, to decision-makers: this is a crossover star. This is someone who expands markets rather than shrinking them. And that matters in labor negotiations. Because the central question in any CBA isn't who deserves more in theory, it's who is generating the incremental revenue in practice. Clark's effect on attendance and ratings has been widely documented, with league-wide jumps that coincided directly with her arrival. That doesn't erase the contributions of veterans. It doesn't negate years of groundwork laid by players who carried the league through leaner times. But momentum has a face right now, and fans know it. So when Reese floated sitting out 2026, the backlash wasn't just about her. It was about perceived ingratitude toward the moment itself. It was about watching someone threaten to withdraw labor from a season that, in many eyes, exists at a heightened commercial level precisely because of Clark's drawing power. Bet David didn't invent that frustration, he amplified it. And amplification from a businessman rather than a beat reporter lands differently because it's framed through revenue logic instead of locker room politics. In that framing, Clark is not merely a player, she's an economic engine. And engines, when they stall, take entire vehicles down with them. The second layer of this controversy is even more combustible because it stretches beyond personality clashes into structural suspicion. The WNBA's public messaging after key bargaining sessions suggested ownership arrived empty-handed, only for details to emerge indicating that a concrete proposal, with escalating salary caps and significant max salary growth, had in fact been presented. Whether that gap was miscommunication, negotiation theater, or strategic posturing, the damage was immediate. Fans who were prepared to rally behind players began recalculating. Transparency is currency during labor disputes, and once credibility wobbles, every subsequent statement is scrutinized. Then there's the uncomfortable subplot involving off-season ventures like Unrivaled, co-founded by high-profile players including Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart. When star players hold equity in alternative leagues that depend on WNBA athletes seeking supplemental income, critics inevitably question whether sky-high WNBA salary growth aligns perfectly with those business interests. Even the perception of a conflict can inflame negotiations. None of this negates the fundamental truth that WNBA players deserve a larger share of expanding revenues. But perception shapes leverage. Meanwhile, Clark's public posture has been relentlessly steady. She talks about growth, about opportunity, about adding expansion teams and lengthening seasons. She avoids ultimatums. She avoids antagonism. That contrast is stark. One side appears to be tightening communication channels and floating strike possibilities. The other is signaling continuity and optimism. Fans, especially new ones who entered the ecosystem because of Clark, tend to gravitate toward the figure who promises games will be played rather than postponed. The data points fueling this debate are substantial: attendance climbing into the millions league-wide, television averages surpassing prior benchmarks, merchandise spikes that dwarf previous years. Those trends strengthen the union's case for improved compensation, but they also complicate the optics of threatening to halt the very momentum that underpins that case. The harshest critics argue that some veterans spent 2 seasons publicly challenging Clark's spotlight, only to now rely on the financial halo effect it created. Supporters of the union counter that no single player builds a league alone and that collective bargaining is about structural equity, not celebrity. Both arguments contain elements of truth. But public opinion often favors clarity over nuance, and right now the clearest image is Clark sitting calmly on a national broadcast set expressing confidence in a deal, while headlines circulate about strike talk. The league's reported financial losses, tens of millions annually, add another layer of fragility. Negotiating aggressively in a profitable empire is one thing. Doing so in a still-maturing enterprise carries different risks. Bet David's central thesis boils down to this: leverage is not self-generated in a vacuum, it is earned through value creation. In his view, Clark has been the primary accelerant of recent value creation, and therefore the sustainability of everyone's leverage is intertwined with her presence and performance. That framing may oversimplify the ecosystem of talent, history, and institutional effort that predates her arrival. But it resonates because it aligns with visible market reactions. Ultimately, the WNBA stands at a crossroads where growth, compensation, optics, and internal unity must align. If negotiations succeed, players could see unprecedented salary ceilings and benefits structures that redefine professional women's basketball economics. If they fracture publicly, the league risks alienating the very wave of fans that reignited its commercial spark. The stark contrast between Reese's combative rhetoric and Clark's composed assurance has become symbolic of 2 strategic philosophies: escalate to extract maximum gains, or stabilize to secure incremental but durable progress. Whether Reese is delusional, as critics charge, or simply aggressive,